Meghan Markle is reportedly threatening the ultimate royal showdown courtroom warfare if Prince William ever strips her family of their royal titles, and suddenly, the question exploding around this entire saga is not simply whether she would actually sue, but whether such a lawsuit could even survive long enough to become the spectacular palace crisis being imagined. Because according to the narrative now circulating, the threat immediately collided with brutal mockery from Piers Morgan, who essentially challenged the entire legal premise behind it, questioning what court could possibly claim jurisdiction over decisions belonging to the British royal family, and repeating his provocative challenge that if she believes his criticism is false, she can sue him. And that is where this story becomes incredibly awkward. Meghan Markle and Prince Harry publicly walked away from royal life after describing an institution associated with misery, pressure, and disrespect. Yet the possibility that Archie and Lilibet could eventually lose royal titles is now portrayed as an enormous red line. Why fight so fiercely to preserve symbols connected to an institution you dramatically abandoned? Critics argue that those titles still carry extraordinary international recognition, especially when Netflix projects, lifestyle ventures, celebrity positioning, and commercial branding remain part of the couple's post-royal world. Meanwhile, the report paints Prince William as preparing for an entirely different philosophy when his time eventually comes. Royal status should follow royal responsibility, and anyone outside that structure should not automatically expect the privileges attached to it. And Piers Morgan, according to this account, was not content merely to question the logic behind the alleged legal threat. He pushed directly into Meghan Markle's history of disputes with critics, once again pointing toward the explosive fallout surrounding the 2021 Oprah Winfrey interview and publicly challenging the Duchess to pursue him legally if his commentary crosses into defamation. That challenge creates the dramatic contradiction at the heart of this story. Threatening litigation sounds terrifying in headlines, but entering an actual courtroom is something completely different. Court proceedings can involve evidence, legal arguments, disclosure requirements, jurisdictional battles, and scrutiny that neither side controls through public relations. While the California side of this feud is portrayed through leaks, warnings, and media speculation, Buckingham Palace is presented as responding with something potentially more intimidating than another interview silence. Prince William, according to the transcript's characterization, is not rushing toward cameras, firing off statements, or publicly negotiating. The suggestion is that William believes future constitutional authority gives him little reason to participate in a media war at all. That confidence supposedly comes from the constitutional structure surrounding royal titles. The argument presented in the report is that decisions concerning the granting, modification, and potential removal of royal styles fall within powers associated with the sovereign rather than ordinary celebrity disputes that can simply be dragged before a civil judge. Under that interpretation, a future sovereign could use letters patent to redefine who qualifies for particular royal titles, potentially restricting prince and princess status more tightly around the direct line of succession. And if Prince William eventually becomes sovereign and chooses that route, the transcript argues that challenging such an internal royal decision through conventional litigation would face enormous jurisdictional obstacles. That is why the supposed lawsuit threat is being portrayed by critics not as the beginning of an unstoppable legal assault, but as a gamble that could expose how limited the available legal options actually are. The louder the threat becomes, the more attention falls on the uncomfortable constitutional question underneath it: what exactly could a court realistically order a sovereign to do about royal titles? And hanging over everything is the memory of Queen Elizabeth II and the famous philosophy associated with royal crisis management: never complain, never explain. For decades, silence protected the institution from being dragged into every public accusation and family dispute. But then came March 2021, Oprah Winfrey, and Meghan Markle's explosive account involving Archie, royal status, security, and conversations concerning how dark his skin might be. Suddenly, this was no ordinary family disagreement. It became an international controversy capable of damaging the monarchy's reputation across the Commonwealth, and Prince William broke through the traditional silence with one unforgettable public response: "We are very much not a racist family." That moment changed the temperature completely, because the future king had demonstrated that there were accusations he would not simply allow to hang unanswered. And if the current reports about titles, threats, and possible legal retaliation are any indication, that confrontation may not have ended at all. It may simply have entered a far more dangerous phase. And this is exactly where the controversy gets even hotter, because the transcript argues that the anger inside the royal camp was never simply about one television television interview it was about what Prince William allegedly regarded as a dramatic rewriting of the rules surrounding royal titles. According to this account, the decision affecting Archie at birth was not created suddenly behind palace doors, but flowed from the letters patent issued by King George V in 1917, rules that restricted who automatically received prince or princess status. Under that framework, Archie was initially a great-grandchild of Queen Elizabeth II rather than a grandchild of the reigning sovereign, meaning the transcript insists that the absence of a princely title at birth followed the existing structure rather than a specially invented punishment. That distinction becomes explosive because Meghan Markle and Prince Harry publicly raised questions about their child's treatment, while comparisons inevitably emerged with Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. Yet the source argues that those circumstances were legally different because Queen Elizabeth II had issued letters patent in 2012 affecting the children of Prince William, ensuring that the children in the direct succession line shared royal status. And suddenly, the entire argument becomes a collision between two completely different stories, one centered on perceived unequal treatment, the other centered on constitutional technicalities that critics insist were being ignored. Then everything changed again when King Charles III became sovereign in September 2022. Under the rules described in the transcript, the Sussex children became grandchildren of the reigning monarch and therefore eligible for prince and princess titles. But instead of allowing that transition to remain buried inside quiet palace procedure, the story exploded publicly in March 2023 when the Sussexes announced their daughter's royal styling during news surrounding her christening in California, declaring that the titles represented a birthright. Buckingham Palace subsequently updated the royal website to reflect the children's titles, but the transcript portrays the episode as another source of frustration for Prince William because it allegedly turned an internal royal matter into a headline-driven confrontation. Even more provocative is what supposedly came afterward: accusations that royal status risked becoming intertwined with American commercial branding. That possibility, according to the narrative, touched the rawest possible nerve because the Sandringham settlement had already established boundaries between commercial independence and royal identity. The question hanging over the palace therefore became brutally simple: can someone leave royal duty behind while continuing to benefit from the extraordinary prestige attached to royal titles? And that question leads straight into the future being imagined under Prince William. The transcript claims that the long-term vision is a dramatically streamlined monarchy, where titles are treated not as glamorous possessions, but as symbols tied directly to service, sacrifice, and responsibility. Behind palace walls, the account alleges that constitutional options could eventually include new letters, patent redefining eligibility for prince and princess status, and concentrating those titles around the direct line of succession. If such a policy were ever implemented after Prince William became sovereign, Archie and Lilibet could face exactly the royal status crisis that supposedly triggered these lawsuit reports in the first place. But here is where the alleged legal threat crashes directly into the constitutional argument. The transcript maintains that decisions exercised through royal prerogative would face formidable barriers to ordinary civil challenges, meaning dramatic talk of hauling the crown into court may sound far more powerful in a headline than it would become inside an actual courtroom. And then Piers Morgan enters the controversy again, publicly mocking the very idea that an American courtroom could dictate the internal rules of the British crown while renewing his challenge over criticism connected with Meghan Markle. The source goes further, suggesting that litigation could create uncomfortable disclosure battles involving private communications, media strategies, and other evidence. One reason it portrays the threatened legal showdown as a strategic trap rather than an obvious weapon. From there, the entire conflict becomes less about one lawsuit and more about perception: California publicity versus palace silence, commercial relevance versus constitutional authority, and the possibility that threats themselves are being used to pressure King Charles III and Prince William before any future decision concerning the children's titles. The transcript ultimately presents Prince William as unwilling to surrender to that pressure, convinced that temporary headlines cannot outweigh the long-term authority of the crown. And that leaves the biggest question still hanging dangerously in the air: if the titles ever really are targeted, will this threatened courtroom explosion actually happen, or will the silence from London reveal that the most dramatic royal battle of all was never destined to be fought before a judge?